Let me share this doc out. Okay. Hello. So we don't have, starting from the top, there's not a ton to discuss.
Some action items we haven't done yet.
Yeah, something to do.
And stuff. On the 16th, we will be having an FFI unwinding meeting and then seal trust.
Yep.
After that, it's not really clear. It seems like moving down, it seems like Safe Transmute is having some progress, although Josh isn't here, so yeah, breather sounds good.
Figure it out.
Josh isn't here, so yeah, but there is some progress.
A breather or a planning team meeting? Like, do we actually have, should we allocate space for planning future meetings, or is that something we'll do during the triage?
We
could. I don't want to use that meeting for that, at least that particular week, but I do feel a need to have some more. It feels like a treadmill a little bit right now. It's hard to keep up with, so some kind of planning week is a good idea. But that could be more like the first one in April or something.
Yeah. Moving down cost evaluation, I'm not entirely sure what new things have been happening, but there is some work on the trade stuff. I don't know that that is new for this week, but things are happening. And as we said, FFI Unwind is having a meeting the 16th. There is a blog post. For the dying trade stuff, there has been no progress.
Yep.
With respect to the grammar working group, I don't think the working group itself is doing so much right now. I'm not so active in that group myself anymore. But me and Petrochenko are like continuing in the work, and specifically right now I have a PR open that will make, for example, if you have an inline module, food, and then you have mod bar, which is an outline module, and then you have like safety false. And safety false, let's assume that false isn't set, then bar wouldn't be loaded. Right now you would get an error because the module doesn't exist. But now it would, you wouldn't get an error.
So loading of files is driven by expansion.
Correct.
I'm under the impression that the grammar group may be de facto inactive. Maybe something worth talking about.
It sort of got bogged down into writing a parser generator rather than writing a grammar and testing. So we don't have any way to like specify precedences in the grammar with the tooling that we have. Perhaps we should have used Nico's generator instead of GL. That is hindsight 2020.
Inventing a new parsing methodology at the same time as writing the grammar. So it's a long lift, even with Eddie on board. Yeah, that could be. I just know I talked.
That's almost crazy as making a new browser. Well, and having the language for it at the same time.
Oh. So. I know I talked to QMX, and he seemed to feel like things were moving pretty slow. I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily a problem, but it might be like if you want to just say, okay, you know what, this is stalled out, and that's okay. Maybe we should say that, or think about saying.
I think that's fine. Yeah. And we have been doing some like actual simplifications to the grammar, which will make specification easier. So some things are happening, but not specification itself. I think fair to say.
Let's put a notebook. One thing that maybe I'll go drop this in the channel, but in the project group RFC that's currently under discussion, the procedure around closing out a project group involved kind of writing up a summary of what work was, sort of a retrospective, so to speak, of where was it, what work was being done, what happened, and maybe that would be a useful thing to write up, just kind of what were we trying to do and how far did we get, what were some of the hard parts, and then if we come back to it, we'll have that context. Maybe I'll throw a line into, put that as an action item to raise this in the channel.
Yep. I don't think any progress, there's any progress on the nether type stuff.
No, I did see the branch in one of my screen things and thought, okay, I should probably do that, but that's as far as I got.
Right.
I think, yeah, well, the action item is still the same one that I didn't do the last 2 weeks, which is reach out to Aaron. So I'll try to do that. Let me put that in my other list of action items in case it's not.
Moving on. So a lot of the PI issues don't need to be discussed. One update is that the FCP for the DRF mute pin thingy completed, and the PR that fixes it, it's soon ready to merge.
Yeah, so this stuff's basically ready, or it will be ready shortly. I don't think there were any concerns that seemed hard, just probably the next day or two.
So the next one is possibly a bug, but maybe we should discuss it a bit, but not this meeting. Maybe Nico will write something about.
Yeah, I can say, I don't want to say a lot. What I will say is it's connected a little bit to some stuff around, it's connected to various things. And the problem is basically, if you have, what is it? Especially for async functions, we wind up with types. The compiler is kind of overly conservative about the relationships between lifetime parameters, especially on generators and types that are not written explicitly. And you wind up with kind of missing bounds that lead the trait checker to thinking that traits are not implemented that could have been. So you have like a generator type that captures if you have a type like this that gets captured by a generator or a closure, then we might not know that tick B outlives tick A, or we don't have the where cause considered in scope, and so then when we try to check if it's implements send, it would fail the well-formedness check, something like that. I don't have it off the top of my head, but
that seems strange. So it's basically not taking the implied bounds into account.
I think so, if I remember correctly. And in general, that's so another transition that's been happening that needs another PR or two, but is changing how some of our lifetime checking works, removing the so-called leak check and so on. And it also kind of is somewhat entangled with this. So I think from that perspective, it'd be good to talk about the bigger question a little bit, and just that's something that's on my list for soon, because I want to get the leak check work done, and that will help with a lot of things.
Cool. Nice, Scott.
So we did.
So
there's nothing.
Yep. Perform a well-formedness check on types, type aliases with no type parameters. So this one is sort of waiting on Crater to give us some data on what this would break.
A little. I don't know if everyone's seen it. I would like to talk just a little bit about it, because I think there's a question of whether we want it. First of all, like the problem is, as people probably know, the way that we implemented aliases, we kind of expand them before we're doing any well-formedness checking or other checking, which means if you have something like this, you don't get an error here, which you might expect. And in fact, we even will warn you, I think, if you do add the bound that you might have expected that you're supposed to have, we link to you and say, don't do that because we don't enforce those, which is okay.
And if you use a projection on the right-hand side, then we will also allow that. So they're basically
sometimes you need them.
More or less.
Right. Sometimes you need them if you want to write code like this. But then you get a warning.
You don't actually need that. You can just write I as iterator.
Code like this, you need it. If you want to write code like this, you don't need it.
Yep.
Yeah. In any case.
Oh, you need the I there.
Yes. In any case, that's the current status. This PR doesn't change that, but it does change the case where there are no type parameters to do a well-formedness check in that event. And it's okay, but it is a little inconsistent.
So why? So one reason why we were supposed to fix this in the run-up to the 2018 edition, the whole thing, but we sort of didn't due to lazy normalization.
We didn't fix it because, we sort of ran out of time and it's hard and takes work. We might now.
Right, and if there are no type parameters, then it's not hard?
Well, yeah, partly, yeah. That's a particularly easy case. So it's actually not hard. Let's see. It's not hard for us to check well-formedness at the definition site. Trying to remember. Well, part of it is that's a big breaking change. So we have to work it in appropriately.
Right.
That's one aspect of it. It's also true that there may be a way, if we wanted to keep the current behavior, I think we could, quote unquote, rationalize it, or something like the current behavior. In other words, if we didn't want this to be an error, there is kind of a way where you're essentially adding a sort of where clause. We don't support where clauses on types. Or do we? I don't know. Probably not.
We do.
Okay. You're essentially adding a where clause like this. Well, I think that's the current notation, but
it is.
You're kind of, it's crazy as that is, essentially saying this type is well formed. And that's what we're doing sort of de facto, and we could plausibly just sort of make that the rule that type declarations have a kind of where clause that their right-hand side is well formed. And it would be backwards compatible, but we can't really do that today. I'm not sure exactly what that would change.
Well, I think it changes. If you actually, if you write that syntactically, write the where clause syntactically, it wouldn't change anything. That is not enforced either. Because if you write k I as iterator, then that gets distributed to the where clause and the where clause.
So we could start to enforce these. If we did, that's what it is. If we did it the way I'm talking about, we would start to enforce things, but we wouldn't necessarily give errors at the definition site.
But wait. All right, yeah, that's true. I think that's the most egregious part of this. Not requiring that you have said I as iterator when you are using a projection. I think that could be rationalized with implied bounds of some form.
All right, so this is kind of what I'm saying, I guess. There are things that are weird.
Yeah. Ideally, I think we should fix both, but perhaps not at the same time. I do think it would be strange to just do this for type aliases without parameters. That would be quite surprising, I think. But maybe that's okay as like a transition plan.
Would the break, would it be possible to deploy the breaking change on the addition boundary?
Well, we don't have a question is how
probably.
can we migrate people? How effectively can we migrate them? But there's really two breaking changes here, I guess, is the point. I don't remember. It'd be nice to know the impact of them independently.
I think we did run grid runs a while back, but those are probably not up to date anymore.
We did. I'm trying to remember. EDB had a series of PRs, and they may have a clever idea for how to fix this second half that I've forgotten now.
Yeah, he was looking for them. He said so in a comment in the PR. Probably have them somewhere in my browser history.
So we could we should probably move on, but have some action items to revisit this topic. And one might be look for EDB's PRs and remember what we did before.
This might be a good topic for a design meeting or something.
Yeah,
we sort of it would be good to sort of
that's a good idea.
Fix this and not like delay it all the time.
I think a design meeting is a good idea. Among other things, if we want to do an addition change, now's the time to be talking about it.
Although I'm a bit like I personally think this is a bug, so it's sort of strange to use additions for this, but I guess it could work.
I mean, if we already have a lint for it, and then doing it on the addition boundary is kind of nice because it's definitely a breaking change. We have the lint that allows us to make it a addition change. It's in the front end.
Wait, but the lint signals the other direction, right?
Sorry. Okay. Right. Like we have a lint for the things that we would break that would fire, which is roughly the rule for we'd be allowed to make this change in the addition. Now, maybe that lint isn't good enough for being willing to cargo fix it or something like that, but
we don't have a lint. Just to be clear,
oh, you're right. We have the lint in the other direction that says.
The problem was that we had a lint that was counterproductive for a while.
Yeah, we have a lint that encourages the thing that is not what we'd be changing it to. Sorry.
So I think we would want a lint to remove bounds if there are no projections and to add bounds if there are projections. Might be a bit tricky to write up as an analysis, but should work.
I think the thing, oh, come on. I think the thing to do, I was going to try to find EDB's PRs, but I won't right now. Yeah, I like the idea of talking about it in a design meeting. I think that's a great idea. Okay. No update on these nominated issues, right? I don't think.
I don't think so.
Unless, did something happen? Mark, you post this comment.
So there were some discussions about making some unsafe code more ergonomic, something. There was one vein of discussion that we had when we discussed the ArcDrop.
Oh, you're talking about ArcDrop.
Yeah.
Yeah. There were, but they were a little bit vague. But
yep, agreed.
I don't think there's any fruitful. I'm not sure if there's fruitful discussion to be had on that this minute.
Yep.
I did end up posting the floating point comment, but I don't think, Amanyu never responded to my ask for an FCP merge, and I guess I can reping, but
Yeah.
not much point.
You can poke him on Zurich or something. Maybe that's more effective.
Okay, that's good. So we're waiting on this. So waiting on Lib's team to okay, good.
Let's see. Moving on, the instruction set attributes.
So this
I
somewhere.
haven't caught up with the recent discussion on this one.
So Locathor pinged me on. I nominated this just to see, just to like throw it before people's eyeballs. I don't exactly know what it does. I think it tells you what it's an attribute that would specify what instruction set should be used for a particular function.
Yeah.
And
it's useful for like arm or MIPS.
right. You can imagine when you're crossing over, I don't know, instruct CPUs that support more than one mode or something.
Yeah, that's the use for like thumb mode, specifically for ARM CPUs.
Is it? And I guess in that context, it's also not unsafe, probably.
Yeah, it's not unsafe.
So I guess the question is there someone who would like to sort of, I like this, welcome to my TED Talk. Is there someone who would like to sort of help move this along or not? I think it's okay if the answer is no right now. It might also fit into like the inline assembly. It's kind of different from inline assembly, but not.
Feels like embedded working group, kind of.
Well, but I mean, it's a language change.
This is sort of a proposal from the embedded working group to us, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there are some interesting questions around like what is guaranteed here in terms of the abstract machine and so on.
It feels like it can't be anything relating to the abstract machine because the abstract machine doesn't know about instruction sets, right?
Well, maybe not the abstract machine, but what is guaranteed and what is not? Is this an optimization? And what are there any other CPUs which could also use this? How general is it? How domain specific is it?
Does that matter? I guess if let's say this, let's hypothesize that there's only one scenario you would ever want this, which is the ARM example, and it was only allowed on ARM. Like it still seems useful in these cases, and if it's easy enough to do, which I'm assuming is kind of like you propagate along, and maybe it's even a hint. I don't know.
Those are some answers, the questions that need to be answered, I think. I sort of tried to search for what this does in the LangRef and couldn't find anything, so it doesn't feel very well documented.
This feels like the kind of thing that I would just sort of call implementation defined as a Rust C feature and not a Rust feature, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I wondered about that.
But like we treat it like a GCC extension, like GCC tries random GCC extensions for doing things like this.
I can't say
it's platform specific, etc. But
I can't say I'm a massive fan of the fact that GCC has a bunch of extensions like that. It's one of those things I don't like about C compilers.
Why not just say it is? I guess someone would have to look at the RC to see what they actually say, but it feels like something where we could just say you can use this annotation. You'll get errors if it's not appropriate. And
so if it's a hint, then we could like tuck it into the optimize attribute, for example. That would.
It doesn't feel like a hint though.
Well, so that's an interesting question that we would need to discuss, I think. What does the language guarantee about this, and what doesn't it guarantee?
But the instruction set enough to actually put this on there. You really wanted that instruction set because otherwise, why you care?
The main reason I asked is
But also,
From the discussion in the RFC, it mostly seemed to be about like code size, which.
but I had the
makes it
impression that it
more
also had
about-
ABI issues in terms of like, there's something about, I got the impression that the address of the function has a tag that indicating like that you need to switch your processor type when you call this thing.
Possibly, I was sort of confused. I need to read that TED talk, but I was sort of confused when I asked about it.
I might be willing to take point on this, Nico. I've been sort of vaguely following along with it.
I'm feeling like, I guess my real question is, so, okay, that might be good, especially if it's coming from the embedded like working group. Maybe it's good to reach out to them. I don't know, but that feels, I would like, if there's any purpose to having domain working groups, part of it is to help us prioritize things that we wouldn't be aware of, that they need. And this definitely fits that category for me. I would not be aware of it. So I would like to listen when they have a request. The reason I brought up the hint question was partly thinking about other backends, and if
Right.
it's probably really easy for LLVM for us to do this, maybe for us to do this in LLVM, but maybe it's harder on crane lift. I don't think that's actually, personally, I would be okay with, well, the crane lift backend errors out if you use this out,
I'm definitely
but like,
not okay with that person.
But okay, we could discuss that, but I would be fine with it personally. Like, not all targets support all things, and
Yeah.
But if it's even or a hint, that's even better.
Right.
Warning and
Like if it is a hint, then you could like tuck it under optimize, and then it's, well, optimize is about hints, and it's even like it's, if it's about optimizing for code size and stuff, then it sort of makes sense. It's an optimize. You're asking compilers to optimize this function this way. All right, but it seemed like Felix wanted to be the liaison. So
Yeah, I'm going to be the liaison. I might need to like of course, double back around with you all about what constitutes a hint. Like, something that the API changes if the hint fires. Is that still a hint? We'll see.
I think a hint. So I think basically it's something we do not guarantee. For example.
Right, but I'm just saying if the effects of that firing have effects on the caller, like in terms of the address of the function has a tag that's on the lower bit, then is that okay? Maybe that's okay.
I think if there's C code that would need to be written differently to call the function correctly, that's not a hint. Like if you're going to get a seg fault, if you're going to get slower execution, I'm okay with it being a hint.
Yeah. Okay, so I should, I'll look into like how that all works out.
Right, and depending on whether or not it's part of the API, it might have type system implications.
I'm adding this to our list of things to check on, but it's basically investigation of some of the questions.
Are you sure you have time for this, Felix, by the way?
It's all, a relative thing.
Okay.
Take a look. We'll call it a preliminary status. But it's a good question. So what about what happened on this?
Assigning Felix on the RC button.
Okay. What happened in this unsafe block, unsafe function? Scott posted a comment. I don't know. Ralph response.
So yeah, so Ralph has a good point. If you disable the whole unused unsafe lint, then you are missing out on useful things. That's probably doing too much. Perhaps we should split the lint into, or like make the lint a group, one which includes two lints, one for the functions thing and one for the other things. And then you can disable the function thing specifically. That's probably more closely aligned with the intent.
I think that's what I had in mind. Yes. In some way.
Yeah, that should probably not be too hard to implement. You basically switch the lint ID from one static to another. I think that should work. We can look at the existing PR and see if it's possible without too many hacks.
The goal is to have some lints such that you can, right, not disable all unused unsafe, but kind of specifically that case.
Yep.
I'm kind of okay with whatever configuration we come up with that achieves that with minimal pain. But I guess we have some room also to change the behavior of the existing unused unsafe lint.
Sure.
Within reason.
I mean, it's a lint. We can have lots of room. I guess the question is how do we want to change it? But splitting it into two lints shouldn't actually change the behavior at all. It just makes it possible to selectively disable one part.
The change I was imagining is to split out a sort of unnecessary unsafe, specifically that would just limit on this case that we want to change behavior on. And that may not be the best name, depending on what else is unnecessary and used is sort of an open question. But
so we would make unused unsafe. It wouldn't trigger in function bodies. Like they would be considered used in a function body, but there would be I mean, assuming they enclose an unsafe operation also. And then there would be a second lint that is like unsafe block in function, unsafe block in an unsafe function. And that would be allowed by default. And you could turn it to warn, I guess, if you want the old behavior or something.
So what I would do is add a lint group, which doesn't change the behavior of people for people who have like said allow or deny unused unsafe. And then that lint group has two lints, one for the things that we don't really want to change, and one for the function thing.
I would also sort of suggest that we try to avoid doing anything like personally, like I would move on during this meeting because I think the best way forward here is for someone to sit down and try to implement it sort of in whatever way works. And
yeah, I kind of agree with that. I wanted to sort of delegate out this detailed look, although I do think there's, yeah, I agree with that. The only thing I would say is that I think we are sort of trying to change the intent. So if you had a warn unused unsafe that you had already there, we might expect that you now start to get warnings you didn't get before, because that was the point. We're nudging people, at least in the new edition.
Maybe. Yeah. I think for now, though, like I would suggest that the hard bit here is probably designing the implementation of like actually doing a check. and what we call the lints is less, like how we call them and how we structure the hierarchy is less important in some sense.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me, especially because few people have. I care more about what the defaults are when you haven't said anything. Okay.
I do the group stuff is probably the easiest thing to implement. I'm just looking at the existing PR.
So we'll defer the details, but the goal is that we get warnings if you are missing an unsafe block in an unsafe function in the new edition or whatever. Goal is what we said before. Okay.
Should we move on?
Mm-hmm. So,
do we? By the way, should we write anything about this somewhere?
probably yes. Seems like there's a missing. Ralph kind of could use a response. So.
Do you want to elaborate, Mark?
I can review whatever happened on the thread and see if I can reply to folks. Yeah.
All right. Moving on. Allied arrays size.
Yeah, still there. What did we say about this last time we talked about it? Oh, right.
Not sure. I personally would. So,
I think I said we should close. You know, okay.
Or postpone or something. I would personally like to see underscore as an expression in as a valid expression. Whether or not that should work in statics or const. I would personally be okay with that. I don't know how people are thinking about global typing inference and stuff, but I wouldn't want to have a specific thing for arrays. I would be okay with postponing as well. Though
Yeah.
having this work for let bindings would make sense as part of the work on constant generics. So maybe something that should happen before we stabilize that.
That's just making it work in let bindings. It might already even. It's definitely much easier.
No, I tried it. It doesn't work. You have different inference contexts for anonymous things, so it doesn't work. The type you get an ambiguous type error.
Okay. In any case, that seems fine. I'm okay with postponing this, yeah, and writing out the proposal. What do we have to do that? Who started this?
Illogic.
No, logic.
What is?
What do we have to do to cancel the FCP? And move
Oh, you mean who made the FCP? Josh.
Does that matter? Can anybody cancel?
Yes, anyone can cancel.
At this point, I think it's fine. I'd be okay with moving to postpone with a description of what we're looking for.
Assuming that's there's agreement around what we're looking for.
Well,
I just shared what I'm looking for. That doesn't mean that.
This is roughly what we had, right? We'll permit underscore in some places in the types of statics and constants. we'll require there's a DAG, and we'll permit underscore in other places. It doesn't talk about lets. I don't really care about lets. We could talk about lets too. I think I would assume it works for lets too.
Well, I don't think it would work for statics either if you try to do it the way you would do it for lets, which is to add underscore as an expression form and then like have type inference work. I don't think that actually works.
I mean, we have to make it work, but
right. But if
implementation work to be done.
If you try to implement it the way you would do for let bindings, then I don't think it will work.
I'm not talking about anything about the implementation, though. I'm just saying this is what we want users to experience. They can put underscore in the type in these places, and we'll infer it, and we will require a DAG so that the inference works. How we implement it, well, that's another question. I wouldn't pursue it in the short term because I don't want to deal with that question. But but that is the user experience you're looking for, right?
I think it matters for the type theory how you implement this.
Why?
And I think the type theory matters.
What? I don't understand. What matters? What is the thing that is not that you're getting at, the essential difference?
Well, so we're going to allow it for statics and calls. And how are you going to impose that DAG, by the way?
I mean, I'm a little bit confused. How am I going to make it work? So
yeah,
I would probably allow it for types too, by the way. Do we allow it for, just like we do for lets? But it would make a variable. So when you have it in there, you know, if you have it in the type of a static, if you have an underscore in an expression position, it would make a variable for the final constant that gets inferred there. And then we would type check the body of the static. And that variable should get unified and get constrained by that type check. If there's a cycle such that we need to know the type of the static in order to do that, we get an error. We get an error at compilation time. And when we're done, we store the final type of the static with the result of that unification.
Oh, but that would, for example, allow static another static which also which has a known type. Okay, but that would still be a type. Sure.
Sure, you can reference other statics as long as their types are fully known. So you can cut the cycle by giving a full annotation.
Yeah, that would work.
And I think I would do the same with lets. The only difference is, in the case of lets, they create the variables in the ambient type checking context. I don't quite know.
Right.
When you said it doesn't work today, I don't really know what that means because I don't understand how underscore even appears there today, but it seems like a bug.
So if you write let x and then an array of U8s and then an underscore and equals 0 and 1 as the array, if you scroll down a bit or you have it in view. The way I implemented this in my experiment was to create an inference variable for the value, and that value has an inference variable for the type. But because anonymous constants, which the underscore would be, are in a different inference context than the ambient thing for the function, that doesn't work out. And yeah. I think you would have the same problem with statics.
They shouldn't. That's the bug in implementation. Like they shouldn't be. The variable should be in the functions context.
I know, but that's not that's probably a hard to fix bug.
I don't.
Is my point.
We can discuss that offline, I guess. Yeah. Sure. It might be hard, but that's just then the compiler is not set up for it.
Yep.
At least that's what I think right now.
Yep. Are you going to postpone the RC?
I would be in favor. I can do it.
Yeah, yeah, thanks.
I'll write it up. All right.
And with 12 minutes to go, calling methods on generic parameters of const events. Well, we have sort of implemented part of this in the compiler, so we're experimenting with it. So the question is what we should do with the RC now.
I think we should create a project group. It seems pretty clear. This is like exactly what they exist for.
Don't we already have a project group which is called the const eval project group?
And we can put it in there, although I think that's arguably A, barely, and C, B, like maybe it's good to have a narrower focus. This is a specific sub project that we're looking at, right? Is how to handle. But yeah, I'd be okay with merging this. It seems like it's our intent to do this, from what I can tell. Either we close the exactly how
sort of module details, yeah. I think it's mostly the same people in the const eval thing that are interested in this as well, or doing.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely the same people. It seems like having the RFC be open is okay, but not. I don't know.
Did we write any comments about doing the experimentation? Like probably.
I thought we did. Maybe not. Pretty sure I wrote a comment about that.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, I mean, it could remain open. I'm fine with that.
Yeah. All right, let's leave it. Let's end the meeting, unless there's any other things. It seems like we reached the end of our agenda, and that doesn't seem too urgent. I want to try to knock off some of these items that have been here for weeks. Move to close. Any second?
All right. Bye.
Go.
See you later.
Go get some cookies.
Bye.
Oh, by the way, we had a release today.
Yay.
Yeah. Slice patterns and stuff.
Cool. Yeah, that's the unwrap thing is going to be great too. All right. Yep. I guess that's the next release, I think.
Ciao.